drink for my troubles, another cold cigarette. I'm not the type, but I'll take a bet that flame will keep burning on as I go chasing the dawn, as I go chasing the dawn, as I go chasing the dawn. Another stroll in the shadows, one more familiar street. Another stroll in the shadows, one more familiar street. It seems that history is bound to repeat. That's how my destiny's drawn. Just when the story is shifting, turns out it's too good to last. Maybe I just can't escape from the past as I go chasing the dawn. Why don't you just release me and go your separate way? My heart has nothing left to give away. Another drink for my troubles, another cold cigarette. I'm not the type, but I'll take a bet that flame will keep burning on as I go chasing the dawn, as I go chasing the dawn, as I another stroll in the shadows, one more familiar street. It seems that history is bound to repeat. That's how my destiny's drawn. Just when the story is shifting, turns out it's
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Halsey Live. I am your host, Halsey English. I am here with the one and only Tom Luongo, and we are here to bask in the fact that we were right and you guys weren't. And we're going to tell you all about how right we were and how wrong everyone else was. But before that, Tom, where can everyone find you?
As always, you can find me on TFL1728 on Twitter, brawling it out with everybody, high and low, all day long, as well as, Patreon/Gold Ghosts and Guns, which is, of course, how Dexter White and I make our bones every month so that we can, continue doing this and pissing everybody off as we go through life. Because if you're not doing it wrong, so
what was it they said in American Gangster? They said you can be unsuccessful and have friends, or you could be successful and have enemies.
I mean, maybe. I tend to not want to do the gangster thing. I mean, let's not kid ourselves here, right? I mean, my goal is actually not to have to get angry with anyone or disagree with anybody or get into heated arguments with anybody. But I've been doing it all night, so it's been fun. So I have to keep doing it because it's more fun to do it this way than it is to do anything else at this point. I mean, look, when people, look, the truth of the matter is that, as you said in the outset, and why we set this one up is that, at the end of the day, like, we're right about all of this stuff. We've been saying for 8 years that eventually we would watch a grand bargain for the Middle East emerge.
Yep.
We would, eventually see a rewiring of the world, right? And the United States would be able to, back away from all of its foreign commitments in the Middle East, and on top of everything else, I never dared dream that we could get out of Europe as well. But like at the time, I hadn't really thought of it. When we first started talking about this, though, I wasn't really thinking in those terms. It was like, let's get us the fuck out of the Middle East and just let this thing play itself out. And here we are. Trump is literally running the perfect operation at this point, to you know to take Iran off the board. He's already taken Venezuela off the board, and target City of London with both barrels, and go, and now, and just that's it. I don't know what else to say. Like, we've just been right about everything. It's just pathetic.
So,
So
I was getting into this yesterday. You had some constructive criticism for me, right? We talked yesterday, and I was sitting back and I was trying to think, like, okay, how can I up my game? Right, and and then I thought about it, and I thought, well, I have a different bit of a style. What I do is, and I believe you do this as well. I don't come to the table with a conclusion. I come to the table with an investigation, and it will lead me to whatever conclusion it leads me to. And because of that, a lot of times I seem combative because I'm just saying this is what the evidence shows. I'm not telling you where it's going because I don't know yet, and I'm not gonna just make a guess unless we're just it's very clear I'm making a guess and we're just doing it for fun. So I was thinking about it, and I was like, there's something that's been bugging me, and because it's a lot of stress I've got going on right now. For all the audience that doesn't know, my daughter over Shabbos managed to crack her kneecap and now needs an emergency MRI and surgery this week, so it's been fun. But I was thinking about it, and what I like to do is I like to think of, like, what is it about the current geopolitical situation that's pissing me off? And why is it pissing me off? Because I can't understand it, right? So Trump starts this thing with Iran. Trump and Bibi, they start hitting the shit out of Iran. It's going well, complete air superiority, right? And just the right people are trying to stop it. You got Britain and France losing their minds, the only two Muslim countries that are opposed to this war. And you have everybody losing their minds, but it doesn't seem like anything is happening other than us kicking the shit out of Iran. And I know that people that are upset about that are either Democrats or they're on Twitter. Because nobody else gives a shit. Like, if you go talk to someone and say, oh, did you hear Trump's kicking the shit out of Iran? No one's like, oh, the poor Iranians. I feel so bad for them. Like, nobody cares. And but then I was thinking, I know Trump enough at this point. And I know that back during the 12-day war and in his campaign promises, now he'd never promised that he wasn't going to go hit Iran. But he did say he wasn't going to get us involved in any regime change, long-term quagmires with boots on the ground in the Middle East, right?
Yes.
So I'm thinking, okay, so Trump does all of this. And then as it's heating up, now obviously any air campaign is going to run out of targets. Like, sooner or later, you're getting diminishing returns, right? But Trump sends 10,000 troops, 10,000 to the Middle East, and of course the typical and I think he does a lot of this, or at least he announces a lot of this, because you can tell who your enemies are by who circles the wagons. And, of course, the typical people, Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson, Candace and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Massey, they all lost their minds. Obviously he's preparing for ground operations. And the big thing ground operations, but they were speculating he was going to take Karg Island, right? Which doesn't make any sense, by the way, because Karg Island is a tiny toll booth. It would be like Israel invading Gaza the day after 10/7 and giving them the fight they want, as opposed to the beating they deserve. Didn't make any sense. But he took the criticism. He didn't come out and say, no, this is what I'm doing. And a responsible person wouldn't do that. They're not going to come out and
Right,
tell you what
because
their plans are, right?
right.
Because it's irresponsible.
Well, he's running a war. Like that's, you
Right.
don't tell you don't just, but it's like listening to all these dumbasses in the Washington press corps say, well, why won't you tell us what your plans are? I'm like, I'm fighting a war, and
Right.
you're just gonna have to live with this. Like, what are you talking about? Like you want us to like we want the enemy, we want to tell the enemy what we're doing. Like, how about shut the fuck up, and we're gonna do work, and then when it's all over, you can criticize the outcome. But
Right.
right now, I'm the commander in chief. I'm operating a war in Iran. I have a strategy. I'm executing on that strategy. We're giving you as many operational details of the effects of that strategy as we can without compromising said strategy.
Right.
And that's that. And the idea that we have to have like 100% full transparency while we fight a stupid, while we fight a war with, admittedly, not was who wasn't supposed to be a third-rate enemy, right? Iran was
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be the big boogeyman in the Middle East. Turns out that, when America decided to, you
Yeah.
know,
Well, I'm not going to
do
take my
what it
victory lap on that yet. That's coming though.
right.
That's
Right.
coming. My victory
So,
lap on
but
that.
just so
But
everybody understands like what the situation is from that perspective,
mm-hmm.
that's why we do what we do, and that's why, that's why I've been sitting here for the last 6 weeks going, well, this war was basically over on day one. The Arab campaign was over on day 11 because they ran
Right.
out of targets. The war's in maintenance mode now, and now we're down to negotiations, and Iran is, trying to negotiate over a war they lost completely.
Okay, so this is where I wanted to. Remember, I said I was
Hmm.
researching all last night, and I was trying to put my head to the grindstone on this, and it
Hmm.
like out of nowhere, it was like a light turning on. I was like,
Hmm.
oh, I get it. Okay, because they were kicking the shit out of Iran, and
Hmm.
out of nowhere it was we're having negotiations. Now I don't know if you
Hmm.
remember, but at the end of the 12-day war, he's like, we have a comprehensive ceasefire. It's going to be over. We're ending the 12-day war now. And Iran kept
Right.
going, who has a ceasefire? What's like? It was obvious that they had no idea what was going on. Like Trump just
Right.
announced that there was a ceasefire and they agreed to it, and then
Right.
eventually they're like, well, okay, I guess. Same
Right.
thing happens this time, right? He announces that negotiations.
Hmm.
First, he announces that their infrastructure is going to be destroyed if they don't come to the table.
Right.
Then he sets a deadline, and then the deadline is approaching, and he says, "We're having substantial conversations. It's going in the right direction. I'm going to put it on hold for 2 weeks." Right
Right.
now, if it doesn't matter if you're looking at the fake news media, Twitter, anywhere, everyone's reporting the same thing. He's
Hmm.
demanding an opening of the Straits of Hormuz. He's
Hmm.
demanding no enriched uranium, and he's
Right.
demanding that they stop their missile program for a certain amount of time, and that they open themselves up for a bit of political dissent. And they keep saying no. Like it's not even like they're saying, "Well, we could talk about it." They're just saying no. So it's like, okay, well, he keeps claiming the negotiations are going really well, but they're not. And meanwhile, he keeps saying stuff like, "I don't want to see their civilization come to an end," and like the civilian infrastructure is about to get hit, blah blah blah. But I went back and I looked at the Truth Social posts about it. Now, the first
Hmm.
one he made, where he said he's like, "We'll blow up their desalination plants and power stations." He straight up
Right.
said it. But after
Yep.
that, in every post that he made, he didn't say they were going to attack them. He just made claims like, "We'll use weapons they've never seen before. We'll end their
Hmm.
civilization." First of all, what weapons could we use that they haven't seen before that would be any different than what we're using now? That was bothering me. And then
Right.
I'm wondering, why does he keep extending this deadline? Like, the most obvious answer, he just needs to rearm the ships, right? Like
Right.
that, and that's
Hmm.
fine. But if that's the case, then why would Iran just be going along with the farce? And
Right.
then all of a sudden, he did what really didn't make the most sense to me, and then that's when it hit me last night. He puts a blockade on the
Hmm.
Straits of Hormuz. The U.S. Navy is now escorting ships through the Straits of Hormuz, and everyone's allowed through it except for Iran, right?
Right.
So, and you're a chemistry guy, so this is going to make sense to you, because I remembered reading an opinion article in a scientific journal a while back, and I thought maybe I didn't see it right. I don't know. I have to look into this, right? Iran has not invested any serious money in oil storage. In fact, the majority of their oil they store it in tankers. They put it right into the
Right.
pipelines, bring it to the tankers. Tankers fill, they get on the road. Right? They
Right.
do have some storage. They say enough to last about 12 days. So, and right now we've turned back every Iranian tanker that's trying to leave and go deliver oil. So as of right now, they've got about 10 days left, and they have to turn the spigots off. From what I understand, and I made a phone call today to the Petroleum Institute of America to ask about this, if they turn the spigots off, they could lose production for up to 10 years because all of the oil that was pressurized to be coming out of those spigots starts reabsorbing into the empty space that's left from pumping all the oil, and you have to basically re-explore, right? Like it's not just putting a pump back in and working, which is, by the way, why Venezuela is only pumping at like 40% capacity, because we built all the infrastructure, but then they just didn't know what to do with it, so they let it lie dormant. Now we have to rebuild all of that as opposed to just coming in and do it. And I thought, motherfucker, now I get it. He wasn't threatening them that he was going to blow up their power stations and all that. He's threatening they're going to run out of oil.
Right.
And he'll keep the Straits of Hormuz open the way he wants, and he'll just ignore them. Because their only trump card is we won't ship the oil. Everyone's going and we'll block the Straits of Hormuz. And now they've proven they can't do it. So,
yeah. And then and by the same token, he also, by blockading the straits, he validates the handful of us that were out there, like myself and Anas Al-Haji and John Conrad and a few others, who were all saying, look, Iran never closed the Straits of Hormuz. Lloyd's of London closed the Straits of Hormuz.
Absolutely.
Iran could never enforce a closure of the straits, and if they did, it would be an act of piracy. So I was on RT the other day, and they wanted to talk about OPEC's production being down 27%, and is this going to have a long-term effect, and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, look, we went through this the last time they tried to shut the world down during COVID, and we wound up with all of this oil production and all this oil, all the storage facilities around the world, all the tankers were all full, and eventually they had to shut some production down. Right. So it's perfectly predictable that that's what's going on. Right. That they would slow production down and everything else, because they don't know how long this war is going to last. Right. Yeah. So, and the world was already full of oil in the first place. It was already a glut. We're sitting there with oil prices, in the high 50s, low 60s, in WTI or Brent, doesn't really matter. Right. And and that's with the choke point and the chaos premium and all the rest of it that goes along with London shipping insurance and the grift and all the stuff that we've been talking about. I'm like, when this has been my argument, I've been watching this thing. Look, Iran can't close the straits. Well, they've got guys with man pads and caves. I'm like, yeah, and then and then they pop their head out. And what are they going to do? They're going to knock down an oil tanker? They're literally engaging in acts of piracy legally, right? And then they are in a war. So under the Geneva Convention, they can impose their will on their enemy if they can.
Right.
And vice versa. It's a great post yesterday on Twitter reminding everybody about this. Like, look, the United States has the right under the Geneva Convention, international law, and all of the general conventions on how to fight war. We can impose the straits, a blockade on the straits. And I said this on RT the other day when they're like, playing all the cognitive dissonance cards about, China's economy is collapsing, but China's still loading oil and Iran is still, blockading the straits. I was like, that's nonsense and that's horseshit. I didn't say horseshit because I was on RT, but I'm like, that's nonsense, right? It's cognitive dissonance. It's either one or the other. Either China's getting oil from Iran at the normal rate, or their economy is imploding because they don't have any oil. It can't be both at the same time. That doesn't make any freaking sense. And then the next thing I said, but when you stop to look at it, Iran was never in the right to close the Straits of Hormuz unless they were then unless they were considering Oman to be a belligerent. Now, but Oman was not, a party to this. Oman was a victim of Iranian aggression. So by that definition, if Iran says we're closing the Straits of Hormuz, they don't have any sovereign right to do so. I read one. It was funny. Like, again, everybody's definitions on this stuff are very important. I want to be pedantic and go through all this because it supports everything you just said, which is as following. Because then on that afternoon, after Trump is imposed the blockade, I turned it around on them on RT and I said, look, if anybody, it's really rich that the Iranians are accusing Donald Trump this morning of piracy by blocking the Straits. When no, he's legally within his right to blockade Iran's ports because they're a belligerent in a war. And therefore, and they've lost, and the aggressor, in this case, the United States, has a right to blockade their ports. That's
Sure.
the way war works when you lose. You don't get to whine that the winners are like treating you badly. You fucking lost.
Yep.
You know, oh my God, we lost.
And let's put the asterisk on it. You're just explaining this to people. In the end, it doesn't even matter if it legally. Like,
right,
at a time of war, international law doesn't really mean anything. But let's just say, he is listening to it.
But look at the order of events and what he did. He allowed them to play their card. Then he flipped it on its head.
Sure.
And no one can argue with him. Like, what are they going to, I know, of course, at the end of the day, if he loses the war, they'll bring him up on war crimes and they'll hang him and they'll do the Saddam Hussein or Milosevic thing to him. But Donald Trump is not going to get Milosevic. Like, that's not going to happen. So what's going to happen here is that Iran is not going to be able to do a thing. And then to your point, now that he has control of the strait, the Arleigh Burke destroyers are out there. I tweeted this out the other day. I'm like, we've got Arleigh Burke destroyers turning back these oil tankers. They've got 4 guys in a speedboat with a machine gun. Mm-hmm. Who are you putting your money on?
Dude, one cannon on one of our ships has guns that shoot like 40,000 rounds a minute. I don't care how many suicide dinghies you launch at the thing. They're not making it.
And again, and the point over and over and over again. The A-10 Warthog can literally kill all of a wing of A-10 Warthogs doing figure eights over the northern end of the strait can kill them all. Right. So, all these people screaming, well, if they really wanted to win, I listened to this bullshit on Twitter for 4 weeks. People screaming like all these assholes, like literally screaming, well, if the United States was really winning, they would bring their aircraft carriers in closer and they wouldn't be using standoff weapons. I'm like, why? We can kill you and everything about Iran from 600 miles away or 1,000 miles away. Why do we have to bring our guys why do we have to bring this shit in theater? Right. That seems dumb. How about you stop telling us how to fight a war badly so that you can have a chance at winning? How about you shut the fuck up and take your goddamn medicine? You third-rate bunch of fucking Shia Islamic fucking crazies. I'm done listening to your bullshit. Okay? I'm over it. It's done. Yeah. You're a death cult with bad code, and I don't give a fuck if I just issued a fatwa against myself. Okay? Right. It's over. The grift is done. The City of London's been exposed. France has been exposed. IRGC has been exposed. Now it's clearly, for the last 2.5 weeks, it's the civilian government in Iran versus the IRGC. They're actually negotiating amongst themselves as to when Donald Trump is going to take the boot off their neck. And before they starve out their 92 million people that they say they're acting in defense of. I read it. Somebody sent me a link this morning to the latest article from somebody previous to this. I consider at least somebody he was pro-Russian, but he wasn't an idiot. Andrew Karibko. I've been watching his career for 10 years since he was a graduate student. And he starts his article this morning about the Straits of Hormuz and Iran defending its sovereignty in Hormuz. I'm like, I stopped reading at the period. I'm like, there's like 3 falsehoods in that first statement. Mm-hmm. And it got reprinted by fucking Lou Rockwell. And I'm like, Lou, give me a fucking break.
You see, I'm lucky.
That's not a statement of sovereignty.
I agree. But you know what? I'm lucky. I'm a little bit lucky on this, right? Because I've been saying this, and now I'll take my victory lap. Because when you're analyzing the Israeli-American relationship, the Middle East, a lot of times there are certain realities that you see that other people either won't see or don't want to believe, right? But you become privy to certain information where you say, oh, I get it now. And I've taken a lot of shit from this from almost everyone I know. The only person who hasn't given me shit, and that's only lately, about this is you. is that I have said from the beginning, the American military is of such a strength that the rest of the world doesn't even hold a candle to it. And everyone wants, oh, but look what happened in Iraq. Look what happened in Afghanistan. Right. Some people say, oh, they've got the best engineers out there in China and Russia and whatever. No, part of the Israeli-American relationship is that we being Israel, test real-world scenarios against real Russian weapons with American shit. Why do you think Israel would fly over Syria all day long? It was to see if the S-400 could pick them up. Right? They tested against this. I have been saying that Russian and Chinese stuff is garbage compared to America for years and years, and everyone gives me shit about it. Right? But that's what Russia did. That's why the Cold War lasted as long as it did. And it was funny. Did you see that mini-series about Chernobyl that was out on HBO? It was very good if you haven't. But
I haven't seen it.
You should. It was on HBO. It was real, or Showtime, one of the two. It was really
HBO.
Good.
It's HBO.
So I at one point they're talking to Gorbachev, and they're telling him like what's going on, and he said, "Our power is the perception of our power," right? And I thought I've been saying that forever. Russia didn't have the power to fight us. Russia had the power to scare us. Russia had the power to make us think that they had a hell of a lot more than they did. And we all know now, we've seen the archives, half of those missiles they were parading through Red Square, they were fake. They were made out of cardboard. And China does the same shit. They put up AI videos and goes, this is what the J-20 can do, this is what this can do. It's not true, and they're not battle tested even if they are tested in simulation. Right? And I've been, ever since this whole thing started, all I keep hearing is, oh, America's about to get fucked up because Iran has hypersonic missiles that can hit aircraft carriers. They're going to sink our shit any day now. Nope. Sorry. You're just not right. Like, it just, it doesn't work that way. But if you extend it a little further, right, you've got Britain and France. Britain and France do the same thing. They don't have any power whatsoever anymore. The only power they have is a perception that they have any power. So when we started this, they decided to fuck with us. They decided to say, Lloyd's is going to shut down the insurance. We're closing down the Straits of Hormuz, even if you and Iran don't, because we're not losing our influence with Iran. Right? And immediately Trump said, oh, we'll provide the insurance, which obviously can't happen as quickly as he pretended. But he said, we'll take care of it. And then all of a sudden he said to them, but if you want to keep your hold on the Straits of Hormuz and on the insurance market and all of that, just come help us. Send your names, which are nothing. It would have literally just been a token if they did it. And he said, send your navy and help us open the Straits of Hormuz. And they both said no. Right? And now, let me finish real quick though. And now we're at the point where Britain and France are completely fucked. Because the straits are closed, the straits are wide open, we can protect them just fine, and the rest of the world is tired of Britain and France at this point. It's not just us. Now, the Arabs, they're not going to deal with them anymore. You know what I'm saying? They're trying to force them into an Israel-Palestine situation where it's just a constant blood feud with death by a thousand cuts. They're not playing this game. America came in and did what it said it was going to do, and they're happy as a pig in shit. You know?
No, you're absolutely right, and I've been saying for a long time now. Let's back up. There's a lot to unpack here, but let's to that last point. Note what Bessent said yesterday, over the last couple of days. Since Iran attacked all of the other Gulf states in the region, they all turned around and went, "We're giving up the banking relationships that we have with the IRGC." To the United States to now sanction under OFAC. That. By the way, that was the end of the war.
I know.
Okay, because now remember everything, folks. If you think that I've been, I started going out on this limb. This is where things become very interesting, right? Because last year during the 12-day war, you were screaming at me, "You're wrong. Trump and Bibi are not at odds with each other," and all of this. I'm like, well, yeah, okay, fine. And I'm like, I don't know. No, okay, I'm open to, I'm open, blah, blah, blah. But when the 12-day war started, which was on a Thursday night, by Sunday, it became very obvious that you had been correct about everything. Right? As militarily. And that's when I started to really, back up, review everything, and go, oh, okay. And you're not the only one who's been telling me for years that there's no way that this is going to happen. But like everybody else, when you don't know and you listen to two extreme versions of reality, what
Mm-hmm.
the Iranians and the Russians are putting out, what the Americans are saying they're going to put out, that they can do, and everything else that's happening, you realize that if you just stay, once you believe everybody's lying a little bit. I mean, this is just like the normal way you would do this, right? You would like
Sure.
look at this. You're like, okay, everybody's lying a little bit. The United States isn't as powerful as they used to be, and these guys are a little bit more powerful. But it's no way, this is going to get bloody if it. And that was the gaslight. The gaslight was this was going to be dangerous. Now let's review just how outclassed Iran was. Hegseth made a point in his briefing with Raising Cane the other day that Iran shot hundreds, if not thousands, of missiles at the USS Abraham Lincoln to take it out.
Mm-hmm.
Why? They wanted the propaganda hit. This was always
Sure.
about perception. If they could get the propaganda hit, then they could win. They tried to play up four F-15s and an A-10.
I know.
Like after everybody was saying, after myself and a couple others were like, dude, they're flying the A-10s.
Mm-hmm.
This war's over. And then I watched everybody like gleefully retweet at me that the Iranians got an A-10. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
you do realize we have 154 more, right?
Right.
They got one. Bully for them.
Yeah.
We got 400 airframes that we could like put together, and we could put them back. We could probably put them back in service if we needed to, at least take out the cartels or whatever.
Right.
And like dudes, like you have no idea what we're talking about here. Okay. And the one they got, the guy still was able to fly the plane to Kuwaiti airspace, eject, and we didn't lose the pilot.
Or the plane.
Right. Or the plane. The plane can be rebuilt.
Right.
Right. He landed it.
Again, this is another, and this was tough for me because I didn't immediately start studying the Middle East. Like when I was in school, I didn't really study the Middle East at all. It was when I started, when I moved there and stuff like that, that I got really, really into it. And it's hard to abandon this way of thinking, and this is for anyone, not just us.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right,
that's the,
right.
the idea of moral equivalence. Okay, that if you're looking at all sides, you have to judge all the information to figure out kind of what the truth is. But when you're
Right.
looking at the Arab and Muslim world, right, you have to just throw it in the trash. There's a reason why Iran just keeps releasing AI slop of them bombing bases that aren't true, and there's a reason why they lie so much, because they have nothing better that they can put out there. So
Right.
if you read all the information, you go, okay, well, Iran has this and this and this, and America has this, this, and this. No, make the assumption Iran has nothing. Okay, because as of right now, they haven't proven that they can do shit. So until they prove it, what can you really judge them on, right? But with Bibi and with Trump, right? I think it was James Lindsay who wrote this the other day, and if it wasn't, whoever it was, I'll figure it out because I have it on my Twitter wall. It's a really nice way to say it. Is that if you're willing to look at Israel and not start from the position that what they're doing has nefarious intent, all of a sudden
Right.
it changes the way you look at everything. So it's easy if you think that Bibi's goal is to demolish Iran and turn it into a nuclear dust pile. Then yes, you're right. It would look like him and Trump are at odds because you would
Right.
think his goal is to destroy the country of Iran. It's not. It never has been.
Well, that's one version of that reality. My version of it was that Bibi was always working for City of London to force the United States into a war couldn't win in the Middle East. That's the way I was viewing
Now
it.
or
And
then?
that's why then, not today.
Oh, okay.
Today, post 10/7. See, because now my argument about 10. This is why I've been reviewing everything. I was like, right after 10/7 happened, and you and I talked extensively, not publicly, but behind the scenes. Just FYI, guys, Halsey and I actually are friends off
yeah.
screen as well, and we just chat every once in a while. He'll call me up, or I'll call him up, and we'll just, when I'm confused about shit, I'll call him, and he calls me. We don't always do a podcast about it. Doesn't always happen.
Right.
Got news for you. So, right after 10/7 happened, and I was and I had to write that month's newsletter. I sent him a copy of my draft lead article that month about my speculation because we were all confused about what happened. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have a lot of information. It was like literally it was like on 10, 12, or 13 I'm writing this thing. And he looked at it and went, that's the best description I've seen so far. Fairest description I've seen so far. Turns out that even that was not a particularly good analysis in the long run. This is because I wasn't thinking in terms of Iran being another outpost to the city of London. I was still in the red ants, black ants. The Iranians are on one side with the Russians, and the Israelis are over here with the neocons and the British, and I was in that mode. That's in many ways that's still where my friend Alex Craner is, and I'm slowly trying to bring Alex across, and he's a smart enough man to begin to see the argument. He may never get there. He may not. Alex is his own man. He can speak for himself, but I'm like explaining all of this. But it was right after. It was right about 3 weeks after 10/7, and Dexter and I were both noting just how free it was to go out there on Twitter and complain about the Jews. Every third person on YouTube was complaining about the Jews, and I'm like, I've seen this story before. Hey, let's turn the amps up to 11. Let's take the squelch button off, and let's turn the amps up to 11, and let's all bitch about the Last Jedi, for example. I used that as my framework, and I saw it with the Jews, and I'm like, oh, hold on for a second. So what happened? Well, we still have all this information. Bibi, like, did Bibi look the other way? Was there a stand down order given? Blah, 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 blah. I can assume all of that stuff. And what I thought was what I think is the most accurate description of what happened on 10/7 is the following. I think Netanyahu was still thinking that at that point in time, especially in 2023, when Trump was out of power and likely not to come back into power, that London told him, hey, we're going to do this thing, and that's going to allow you to go take out Hamas.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened? Then the Qatari wing of Hamas, also working for City of London, was given after the stand down order, went hog wild and slaughtered a lot more people than Bibi was led to believe was going to happen. Mm-hmm. Meaning London at that moment was throwing Israel under the bus and was about ready to start the process towards, setting the entire region on fire, knowing full well that the Israelis, rightfully so, would go on tilt just like the Americans went on tilt after 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in revenge. And that's exactly what happened. And they got what they wanted. And Netanyahu at that point went, oh, you motherfuckers.
Mm-hmm.
And then Trump comes back to power. And now it's a different story. He's no longer a creature of London, because he realizes, as an Israeli patriot, which is another framework that everybody has to wrap their heads around. Bibi may be sinister, he may be this, he may be that. I don't give a shit. But at the end of the day, I can believe the basic story that he's an Israeli patriot.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, right? If that's the case, and again, I'm not here to. I'm saying if that's the case, and I'm mostly there, right? If that's the case, then all of his actions since then have been in service of fucking over the people who fucked over Israel, because he could see what they were doing, which was they were going to destroy. They were throwing them under the bus to decamp to the UAE and the Gulf states, and decamp City of London's financial flows to the Persian Gulf under Iran nuclear umbrella,
mm-hmm.
and aligned with the European Union. And you have the UAE, the money laundering center. You have Qatar, the LNG pumping station, and you have Oman spigot, and you have Oman, the MI6 listing post.
Right.
And you also control the IRGC on the other, or are in league with the IRGC and the mullahs on the other side, and you own both sides of the Persian Gulf. And now you concentrate everybody's attention on that. Meanwhile, you've cut off other sources of oil to flow around the world, which is why they sanctioned all the Russian oil, why they killed off any Russian exports into Rotterdam, which was feeding most of Europe for the last 4 years. And they were now, at the same time, their quislings in California were shutting down all the oil refineries on the left coast in the United States, forcing California and the United States to import jet fuel, diesel fuel, and gasoline into California to run the myriad of military bases we have out there. And just, I mean, you can see this at this point in time. What they were doing was they were collapsing the world's oil market onto the Strait of Hormuz, that they were about to create, Durka Jihad version of fucking North Korea in the middle of the geographic choke point of the world, and stop and keep everybody focused on the center of the map, but the globe, everybody's focused on the old world, Europe and the Middle East. Meanwhile, the new world is like, fuck a whole lot of this. And this is why it's important. If you flip a globe and you start looking at the globe from different perspectives, you start to see the potential for different alliances, or at least different overlapping interests. And I've been saying this for 2 years, and I'll give Alex Craner another shout out on this one, because he's the first one to put this idea in my head when he said, take the globe and shift it and look at the Pacific Ocean. And then ask yourself, who are the three major powers that ring the Pacific Ocean? America, Russia, and China.
Mm-hmm.
And Japan, and to a lesser extent, Japan. We don't need the old world. The old world is centered around that. Or even better, look at the map from the Arctic, and you see the same, and you see America and Russia are incredibly, and so now you can look at the world differently, and you realize that's the way Trump is thinking, clearly, and that's what he's blowing up. And so you put all of that together with a lot of the stuff that Ian Burlingame is talking about, what we've all been talking about for years, and you have, well, then the clearest thing to do is to don't let Iran get a nuclear weapon, because it's anathema to America's interest, it's anathema to China's interest, it's anathema to Russia's interest, even though they've had to play footsie with these assholes for years. Like, why do you think they stood down and when they stood down last year during the 12-day war, it wasn't just because their military technology wasn't that good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna make the argument that it was the beginning of the end of this Iran blackmail grift, this oil volatility blackmail grift that the fucking British have been running for 120 years. Because
Okay, so
that's my thinking on that. Because remember, the Russians have very, very deep ties with Israel. A lot of Russian Jews
Sure.
in Israel. Yeah.
Sure.
So it's a much more complicated map than anybody wants to talk about. But when you look at 10/7 as the inciting incident for all this, the only thing that makes any sense is that London betrayed Netanyahu. Netanyahu flipped, and now what Trump has been doing with the Persian Gulf is to turn around and flip all the Gulf states, and he's attempting to flip Iran by wiping out the IRGC and allowing the civilian population to take control of the area. Iran is dead, long live Iran, basically.
right.
And then at the end, and then now if you think through all that, it makes perfect sense that that's where we would be. And why would Russia and China go along with that? Obviously, they would absolutely go along with all of it. Makes sense.
So
Because-
I've got a little thought experiment, or a little fun to have with you on this one. So when I hear like EM's idea of what happened on 10/7, and I hear different people do it, I kind of look at that, like studying that, as more fun than anything else, because I don't believe we'll ever actually know. There's not going to be like a document that said, oh,
Right.
Bibi knew, or anything like that. Like, we can only speculate, right?
Mhm.
But I look at the situation in Israel the way it was at that time. There were massive protests in the street. Bibi was like, if anything, like Europe, who hates Bibi, by the way, always has, and Biden, who hates Bibi, always has. They were going for the kill shot on Bibi. Like, he remember, he had just come back into power. He didn't even make it into power the election before. I would say he was as close to done as you could get right when 10/7 happened. So I think that looking at what happened on 10/7 isn't as important as looking at what happened on 10/8. I think that Bibi, when he sat back and looked at it, right? And honestly, I was talking about this nonstop because I assumed he was going to take the other route. The route that he normally took up all years leading up to this, no matter how bad the terror attack, no matter how many people died, no matter who was kidnapped, he did what he had to do until Europe and America told him it was time to knock it off, and then he just stopped. And it was always one of those things where, especially in Israel, it was worse than they do here. It was always, oh, he's playing 5D chess. He's just stopping now so that he can get the intelligence necessary to go in and really wreck them. No, he was just stopping. Like, that's just the way it was, right? And it got to the point where, like, you look at him, if anyone who asked me, I would tell them I didn't like Bibi. His biggest reason was because he was such a cuck. That he would always give up right before anything good happened that he could claim credit for. But I think on 10/8, he realized something. He had two choices. He was either going to take the world opinion into account of of Britain and France and the rest of Europe and Biden, and do everything limited. And when they told him to knock it off, he would do his best to negotiate, like, to keep going and all of that. Or he was going to have to make the decision that even if it costs him the relationship with Europe and even somewhat America, that's what he was going to have to do. Which is, by the way, what every country has to do when they stop being a new country and become a big boy country. Right? Like, sooner or later, you have to make decisions that are in your best interest and not in the interest of what other people want. And I think Trump coming into power just helped this, by the way, because they're like boomer besties. But, like, at the same time, like, I think Netanyahu made the decision. He was going to do what was necessary for Israel at this point because, and especially as it progressed, seeing the PR campaign against him and against Israel, I think he realized, like, this might be the last shot where we can count on the support. But I think somewhere along the way, he looked at Britain and France and the rest of Europe and said, okay, enough of this. If I listen to them, we're going to die. Because they're going to keep doing this until they finally depose me. And I always say, like, as much as I hate the man, anyone else who'd been leader of Israel would not have gotten through this. It's only because of how long he is. He understands diplomacy. He knows when to push, when not to push. He's a master politician. Okay? If anyone else had been in power, when Biden called and said, don't invade Rafah, they would have said, okay. And they would have come out and said, well, there was too much pressure from the U.S., we couldn't do it, whatever. Bibi knew how to wade the politics of this perfectly. But I think at that point, when he saw the protests against him that were all funded by Soros in Europe, when he saw that all these people were saying, oh, just give up, even though our hostages were still there, right? Like, I think he made the decision, I'm doing what's right for me and the country, and the chips are going to fall where they may. Okay? And he did. And again, like, you saw when he went into Lebanon, right? The pager attack, they did all of that, and then out of nowhere, he announces they're going into a ceasefire. It's a week long. It was like, even I was like, wait, where did this ceasefire come from? Right?
Right.
And then out of nowhere, 4 days later, Assad's gone. It's like, at that point, I feel like Trump and the American administration are like, okay, I think it's time we all get us the fuck out of the Middle East. Like, I think that's when the real heart-to-heart kind of happened. And they were like, listen, we're going to back you in what you're doing. You're still going to have to listen. We can't just let everybody do whatever, but it's time to end this. Right?
Well, the interesting, I agree. And let's put a finer point on Netanyahu's motivations for having to go time. He knew. I've been saying for years. I'm like, the American demographic is moving against him. I've been saying for years, like, Israel is a rapidly depreciating asset. Hezbollah is a rapidly depreciating asset of whoever. You know, the IRGC is a rapidly depreciating asset, right? It turns out. I wasn't thinking about it in those terms originally, but Israel as a thing to be used as a geopolitical flashpoint, you know, with American backing.
Oh, go a step further. Other than what was considered the axis of resistance, which is Iran, Syria, and Hamas and the Palestinians and Hezbollah, right? Go a step further. Since 2016, the Saudis and the UAE and Oman and all of the Gulf states, they're done. They don't want this. They don't want to blame Israel for all of life's problems anymore. It turned out really bad for them.
No, agreed. Trump, that goes back to Trump's first term and how he went to the
terror financing center.
But what I'm getting at here is that Netanyahu can see what's happening in the United States. He can read the polls. He can read the demographics. He can read what's going on. He knows this. London knows that Israel is a rapidly depreciating asset. So if they're going to pull the pin on World War III to reflate their global piracy market, guess what? We've got to pull this pin now, right? So their incentives line up. Once that happens, to your point about what happens on 10/8, he's looking up, going, "Yep, they have now turned on us. They're no longer backing us anymore. I don't have an option to go back. I don't have a reverse gear here, or I give up, or I give Israel up." And that then speaks to what Kissinger, what everybody's been like talking about, how Kissinger kept saying, "Oh, Israel, as we know, it won't survive till." Won't survive till 2025 or whatever. It's like, it's going to be gone in 15 years. And he was wrong.
So
And he was wrong.
let me add
And
one
the
thing
reason,
to what you're
but
saying.
but
Let me add one
think
thing
about
to
what.
Okay, go for it.
Let me finish. Why did Kissinger say that? Because Kissinger was the good globalist architect of all this bullshit, and he knew when quote unquote Davos or London or whatever you want to call it, the admixture of European and British power was going to throw Israel under the bus.
Yes.
Was going to move against them in such a way. I have to make the fine point here. Move against them and liquidate them as an asset, and then embrace Islam, right? Invite the third world in, destroy old Europe, and decamp to the Middle East, and in the process use the United States to fight their wars for them and bleed them out in wars of attrition that they couldn't win. Remember, now think about sequestration. Now think about Fannie and Freddie and the 2008 financial crisis and this, that, and everything else, and how they had already set that fucking table up in the United States. They wanted to end. For how long did the Air Force have a hard-on for destroying the A-10 Warthog and getting rid of all of them? And it was only the Army and the Marines and all the other services who kept saying no, putting the pressure on Congress to keep them. If we didn't have the A-10 for this campaign, this would be a much different war.
Agreed. But there's one thing I think I don't know if you're leaving it out, like, or you're just assuming that I know this. Like, with Bibi and Trump, okay? When Biden was in power, I think Bibi's mind frame was, I'm doing what I need to do and I don't care what he says. Like, if it costs me the relationship, at least my country survives. I think when Trump and him had that meeting, it was after Trump got elected, but it was before he was inaugurated, right? And just so you know, there still is no transcript of that meeting. They always release like a generalized transcript, like before and after. They didn't this time. I think that basically Trump said to him, like, everything that I've gone through in the last 8 years, the witch hunts, the impeachments, the police investigation, all of it, it's all Britain and France, it's all Europe, it's all Davos.
Yeah.
The same people that are fucking you over are fucking me over, and I'm on board if you want to do this. And I think him and Bibi made a concerted effort together that they were putting an end to this.
Yes.
Because then Bibi cut off Britain from intelligence sharing.
Yes.
Right?
He did it first.
Right. He's told France to go fuck themselves 20 different ways. Like, he's not listening to them at all. And Trump is just, he's now at the point where I always wondered, will I be alive to see this? He got to put up or shut up. He got to the point with them where he said, you talk a lot of shit, but now you're coming at us and you're trying to stop us from going through the Straits of Hormuz. You're trying to create a global energy crisis, and you're threatening with your insurance power to do all of this. Fuck you. I'll insure the ships. Come at least help us win this out. Right? Like stand in your own interest. And when they said no, he realized, okay, they're not even an ally anymore. They're an enemy.
I don't think he realized it then. I think he's known it forever.
I know too. But I'm saying, like,
he had to prove it to everybody else. Somebody asked me on Twitter the other day. They asked me on Twitter the other day, if this is what his plan is, why doesn't he just say this? I'm like, why does he hide behind like nukes and this, that, and everything else? I'm like, because it's making it easy to make the counter the counter argument that he's just the plaything of the Jews. I'm like, think about how much pushback I'm getting with a sympathetic audience here on Twitter to what I'm saying. Can you imagine the kind of opprobrium Trump would get with the entire world already against him? They would just they turn everything up to 11. He has to show it to you first, and that's been his MO. I'm going to show them that they're against me. I'm going to show you that Obama was behind Russia again. I'm going to show you this. I'm going to show you this. I'm going to show you that. Because otherwise, as you pointed out at the beginning of the friggin' show, you said, hey, if you ask the average American about, what do you think about the war in Iran? Do you like pour in? I don't give a fuck about the Iranians.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't care. Like, most of them don't have any clue. I had to remind people that, look, we are talking at a very high level. We're not 1 sigma away from the norm of geopolitical discussion. We're 5 sigmas from the norm. We're so far ahead of the fucking curve that they've had to deploy unbelievable amounts of fucking anti-signal to squelch our signal over these years. They've done it to you. They've done it to me. They've done it to guys like Joaquin Flores and everybody else. They've done it to, even to a lesser extent. You can even argue everybody associated with LaRouche over the last 50 years. How much have they said, right? And LaRouche himself is a controversial figure, but the quote unquote the daughters of LaRouche, right? The Promethean Action Ladies and whatnot, who are focused completely on, explaining to everybody in the most simple terms imaginable, with receipts. Oh, by the way, it's always the British, and this is the reason why, and this is how they're doing it, and they've now been able to popularize this. And so you're watching a whole bunch of counter signaling going on. And I'm like, look, this is a hard story to tell. Trump is not stupid. He knows exactly how hard it is to tell these stories in the media. You have to seed those ideas into the zeitgeist, allow the people who get it to popularize and move the ball forward, and then let it percolate until he's ready to move and add the next brick to the foundation of his argument. And that's what he's been doing. So when we've been doing this forever and a day, but then when a guy like John Conrad can explain it all from the terms of shipping insurance and everything else, and he gets it, when a guy like Anas Al-Haji is like, no. I mean, and Anas, I go back and forth with whether I like his analysis or I don't always agree with his analysis, but at least he's interesting. And on everything having to do with this war, Anas has been spot fucking on. He like me and like 5 other people were saying this: Iran can't close the Straits of Hormuz. They don't have the ability to do so.
They were relying on a meme. They were relying on an archetype, because everyone's always said you can't go to war with Iran because they'll mine the Straits of Hormuz. Right? But the whole point is we have minesweeper boats now. We don't care if they mine the Straits of Hormuz. It's been that way for 15 years. It just still it still is in everybody's mind, right? Yeah. But yeah. I remember me and you had this conversation actually. Is that during Trump's first term, not only was he very naive as to how the Borg was going to fight against him, but he was very undisciplined. He came out and said whatever was on his mind, and everyone loved that he was so blunt, but it caused him a lot of heartache, and it always showed his hand before he had to. I remember during the campaign, we both kept saying he's so disciplined this time. Like, even though he still says like retarded shit sometimes, like he's so disciplined, And I remember thinking, like, as he took office, he's still being very disciplined. And there was something that was also bugging me. Why is he allowing Massey and MTG and Alex Jones and all of them? Normally, he'd be sitting up till 4 a.m, making up names about them, telling the country how retarded he was just letting it go. And basically his argument kept being like, especially Joe Kent, he was like, oh, I barely knew him. He's like, I met him once. He's a loser. Who cares? And with MTG, he's like, oh, she's a traitor. Like, who cares? And like, now he just did that whole post about how retarded they are. Right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden it like kind of occurred to me again when I was looking at it last night. He wasn't going to make a big deal out of the really dumb shit that they've been saying, that Charlie Kirk was assassinated by the French Legion and that all of that. He was going to let them get to the point of no return. And because they did now. Now you've got Tucker Carlson constantly glazing Islam, right? And the rest of them are using different arguments about how he's not doing this, he's not doing that. It's still so expensive here and blah, blah, blah. I know he's doing all that. He knows he's taking care of all of that. He gave them all of the ammo that they needed to shoot themselves right in the fucking head. And then he came out and said, why are you even listening to these people? They're just low IQ. He didn't even say, he didn't address their arguments. He didn't say, oh, look at Tucker glazing Islam and get himself in trouble for Islamophobia. He just said, why is anyone listening to these idiots? They're all low IQ. They're just dumb. Yep. And now they're at the point when this comes off, when he doesn't send troops into battle in Iran, when it doesn't require thousands of American sacrifices, when it doesn't, turn into a massive bombing campaign again, when all of this gets done, okay, all of them are going to be sitting there going, holy shit, I have no relationship whatsoever with anyone in Trump's orbit anymore. And I was wrong about everything. And they can't admit it. They can't just come out and be like, oh, I fucked up. Right? So they're now irrelevant as well. And these are the British assets. Right? Flynn, yes. Bannon, Tucker. These are the British assets. They're pulling out all the stops, using every fucking European method they can to try to manipulate the American public. And as I said, it's the one mistake they all seem to make constantly is they believe that when they talk about mass migration in Islam, they believe that Americans believe that Islam is infecting America. It's not. Our immigrants come from Central America and South America. Yes, we have more Muslims than we probably want, but all of their immigrants come from Africa and the Middle East. All of ours come from Central and South America. We don't want them here because we don't want the economic burden. We don't like what they're bringing to the table. But they're not. They're not Muslims and Africans who are raping people in the street on a daily basis. We're not in the same boat as them. And they want to make us in the same boat as them. So they think that pushing this same pussy shit that works over there, oh no, Islam shouldn't be criticized because after all, Islam is so good and refugees are just people that are here and the church says this and all that shit that they used on their population in Europe doesn't work here. And it's not working here. And they're digging themselves this giant hole that they'll never get out of. And you know who they're taking down with them, by the way? You're going to disagree with me on this, by the way. J.D. Vance. I didn't think he had a chance of winning the nomination anyway. I think the only way he wins the nomination is if things are so bad, nobody else wants the job in 2028 because they know they're going to get crushed. But I think his chances are over. He's completely tied to all these people. You know, he went on an interview with Erica Kirk the other day and recommended Theo Vaughn as a podcaster people should listen to. He's done. I'm sorry. He joined the crowd. He decided that the Twitter was the way to win hearts and minds in America, and he's learning the hard way, just like Michelle Malkin, just like Ann Coulter, and just like all the rest of them. The country doesn't think like that, and they'll fade into irrelevancy too.
Well, if that happens with Vance, it happens with Vance. I don't really care. I don't really have an opinion on Vance one way or the other, to be honest with you. It's been my interpretation that Vance has been being groomed. We're given every opportunity to. Oh,
let's have some fun, real quick. Let me interrupt you on that one. Let's have some fun. No. Groomed by who? By who?
By Trump?
No, he's not. That's never been the case. It was Don Jr., Tucker, and that whole wing. But go ahead.
No. Don Jr. didn't send him to Hungary. Don Jr. didn't send him to Islamabad.
He sent him to Hungary to embarrass himself. Viktor Orban was about to get crushed, and Vance had to give a whole speech about how Orban was awesome, and then Trump called on speakerphone. That wasn't a sign of responsibility. That was an embarrassment. Meanwhile, Rubio's holding every portfolio in the government that no one else can do.
Well, again, I don't want to have an argument.
Yeah, let's not go.
It's not important. Vance in 2028 is not important.
Agreed.
We'll deal with that. We'll deal with that after we win or lose the midterms, for fuck's sake. But
Agreed.
Vance, all I'm going to say is I'm going to stand by the statement. He's being given every opportunity to man up.
Right.
Whether he does or he doesn't is a different story. Now, what's more important is that the point about giving them all these assholes, giving them the rope to hang themselves, that is the strategy. That's how you win, right? You had to let all these people out themselves. Trump knew what was in the Epstein files. He knew Steve Bannon was a traitor. That's why he got bounced him from the administration in 2017. He was the prime leaker, right? So now the bigger question. Well, no, I lost my train of thought because we were going back into the Vance thing, which yeah, no, I don't want to go there. There was something else you said that I wanted to pick up on, and I can't. Oh
We were
no, no, I know, I got it,
okay.
I got it. The who he's going after. What's really important is he's going after the fucking religious, quote unquote, charities that
Yep.
are the ones are trying to push the pastel Christianity, which is, or worse, halal Christianity, which is the way you should think of, you think of the Mormon church. It's just Islam for Christians. And
Okay.
oh, by the way, Data Republican just did a massive
I saw
data
it. It was
dump
awesome.
on on the Church of Latter-day Saints and all of this stuff and Charlie Kirk and all of it. I'm like, and everybody, and apparently a lot of my people are in there going, dude, Tom's been saying to fucking look at the Mormons for years now for a variety of reasons. If again, going back to the Britain and the Schofield Bible and this and that and all that's all bullshit. That's all shit that was seeded into the American zeitgeist to create create these dispensationalists and these Christian Zionists in order to play this freaking game and make Israel into the big the thing that they wanted to defend, so that then at the last minute they can betray them, because that's what they do. These
Yep.
people create straw men, and then they cut their knees out from underneath them, and everybody's sitting there going, but the Balfour Declaration and this. I'm like, yeah, and at some point everything has a time value. Everything is an option, folks. They all have fucking Greeks associated with them. They all have time functions.
Yep.
And this idea that once something was one just because something was something, right, aligned with something, or you could say this was equal to X, doesn't mean that X is a constant. It's not a constant, it's a function. And the value of X changes over time. To think about it mathematically, I know you get it because you're a math guy like me. You're a higher order math guy like me, and so you understand that these are all time functions, and then eventually they're going to just betray them, and they're going to and they'll do so in order to create the cognitive dissonance that they can then insert the next psyop into the zeitgeist, because you do the flip on Israel, like we talked about earlier on 10/8. All of a sudden, it's okay to start complaining about the Jews. And now we can start the anti-Semitic campaign. Now we can start the process of embracing the Palestinians and Islam and this, that, and everything else. And everybody's caught flat-footed going, but I thought Britain created Israel. Because that just kind of made it into the zeitgeist, right? We popularized that idea for years. Now they're going to use that against us. I'm like, this is what they do. And so then what they'll do is create the new thing you're supposed to believe in, which is now that Islam's a religion of peace and all this other bullshit. No different than, I've been talking about this in this context for a while now. They even created the false, like the false alt geopolitics. Go with me for a second and I'll explain what I'm talking about. And this will make perfect sense when we get to the Catholic Church, because we got fake Catholicism.
Oh,
and
well,
fake,
I'm literally biting my lip right now to get into it. So
I know you are.
I'm
But
going to
wait,
piss
but
off a
wait,
lot of
but-
people on this one. But let's go.
Well, but my point is that if you think about it, how I described Steve Bannon right after it became obvious that he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, I said, well, obviously, what was Bannon's raison d'etre? Russia's not our enemy, China's our enemy, right? Well, that's the Straussian two-step. So the neocons go out there, and the John McCain's and the Lindsey Graham, Russia's our enemy, Russia, right? Everybody goes, well, that's fucking. A number of people go, well, that's fucking stupid, right? I can see, they're the ones that are looking at the Christopher Steele and Stefan Halpern and all the stuff that was happening with the Russiagate stuff. They don't believe Russia's our enemy. They can now, and the Russian propaganda is strong enough that it finally starts to break through the zeitgeist. You get a whole bunch of people like myself and others who then make that their thing as they're trying to learn the geopolitics and go, no, we should be talking about the other side of this. Steve Bannon sits on the other side of the equation for the normies, going, oh, by the way, you fell out of the Russia is the big bad enemy psyop. Well, I got the new psyop for you. It's really China. And that makes you feel smart, because you fell out of the Russia thing, and now we can make you feel smart by making you into the newly minted China expert. And I'm going to feed you all this bullshit about China being our enemy. Not that
Yep.
China's not a problem, but
They're not an
that was
enemy, they're a competitor.
Right. Obviously, I understand that. What I'm
Right.
getting at, Halsey, is that for the normie and for the people watching this play out, you have to catch those people that fall out and move them somewhere else. Because the last thing you want them to do is go, well, if they did this about Russia, maybe they're doing the same thing about China. That's the space that you and I operate in and have operated in for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then guess what? We become everybody's asshole.
Yep.
Right? So which is okay. Again, folks, I'm not grousing here. We're just doing what we do. But it's to understand, you can understand the mechanism, right? And then they fire everybody. Then Rupert Murdoch fires everybody from Fox News, Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, everything else, and then turns right around and hires them back as the Fox News podcasters, as fucking Sundance put out the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Literally trace the friggin' money. They all work for Rupert Murdoch.
Yep.
Doing what? The same goddamn thing. Another version of the same thing. And it's all over and over and over again. You can see it. They create guys like Dave Rubin, then they create Megyn Kelly, then they create this one, then they create that one, then they create that one. You know, the latest thing I've noticed, and I'm getting myself in trouble on this, but I don't give a shit because I've already pissed them off. They even went so far as now they had to go down the stack and create the anti-Tom Luongo. They had to create Simon Dixon.
Yep.
Simon Dixon is literally the anti-me created by the city of London.
Yep.
I mean, that's all he is. And what he does is he takes all of my talking points, and then right at the end, when he's about to go name the enemy, he then swerves and says, you know, it's all America's fault. Every time. Like, I've seen this story before. I've watched 100 people do this, and I've been victim of this like multiple times. And so I look at this and I'm going, oh, wow. They don't leave anything to chance. They've got handlers at every step of everybody's career.
Yep. Now you ready to have a little bit more fun? Let's have some fun for the audience.
So now let's talk about the Catholic Church and why we had to get a Chicago mobster as the fucking Pope.
So wait, let me get there real quick. Okay? Like
Sure.
when you're looking for cancer, right? You can't just obviously open up the body and look at all the organs and say, "Oh, there's the cancer." You have to look for the markers, right?
Right.
So ever since you first broached the idea of Britain and France not being what they seem with me years and years and years ago, I've been obsessed with saying, okay, I need to find the marker. When am I looking at something that's real? And when am I looking at an op by Britain and France? Right?
Right.
And it's taken me a while, but I got it. Whenever I see the third world, that's Europe's weapon. Okay? And I looked at it and I said, okay, wait. We look at the Somali fraud and all the fraud going on in all the blue states. There's the third world. They're stealing all our money and racking us up into debt, right? And then I see all of a sudden,
worse, and using that money to fund the pirates that then in that area to reinforce the IRGC and the Houthis and Hezbollah and everybody else. Oh, by the way, just saying.
Of course,
keep going.
So then I look at it.
Those dots.
So what else is the third world known for? They love, just like Europe, whenever they're going to start blaming the Jews for everything, that's when you have to look at, okay, then who's really doing it? Because there's not enough Jews to do all of this. Okay? Like, it's nuts. So when you start, and obviously because I have an interest in debunking this shit anyway, right? I start looking, because everyone goes, oh, it's all the Jews with the open borders. Look at HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. They have this huge budget, and they bring in third worlders, right? And then I looked into the numbers, and I said, wait a minute. The Catholic Church outspends the HIAS 10-1 on bringing in immigrants. This is their whole reason for being. So wait a minute. All of a sudden, Trump looks into it, and he says, wait a minute. All of these brilliant nonprofits that we have going all over the world, they're just stealing our money and sending it to Europe and our enemies. And he shuts down U.S. aid. And then all of a sudden now, I think what he's looking at is he's looking at certain countries, Israel being one of them. Remember, Trump is really pro-Israel. I'm not going to apologize to people for it. Okay? It doesn't mean he's owned. It just means, and I used to say this about the alt-right because it never made sense to me. Right? Why would the alt-right counter-signal Israel? It's exactly what they want for themselves, right? A country with strong borders, strong defense, who gives a shit about their people. Like, you would think that they would be white Zionists instantly, right?
Right.
But they don't, because that's that European sickness of always wanting to come into the third world and launch the third world on everybody else because it keeps everyone under their fucking thumb. Right? And I keep looking for it. And every time I see it, I have to step back from it and go, I get it. This is where this has got to be Britain and France. Because, or Davos or Catholic Church, whatever it may be. And now I was waiting for it. Because I knew sooner or later the Pope was going to come out and say something about the war. Right? And I knew sooner or later he was going to come out and say something about Islam. And it seemed, again, Trump is so disciplined this time. I've been wondering why is he not like going after them also? He's so about closing the border. He's so about stopping the nonprofits. What's he waiting for? And then the minute they came out, what does he bring up? The Catholic nonprofits. And it's like
as opposed to what he did in his first term, which is he would lead people to stuff by talking about Huma Abedin to get everybody to start looking at Anthony Weiner. Right. He used to do that. Right. That's the way he used to work. He used to lead people to ideas. And then we would go, and everybody would go, he's playing 4D chess. And that was, of course, the PSYOP. And now he's just moving events in a particular way that put pressure on them to then out themselves to try and stop him from what he's already done. Trump is, I make the joke all the time that I call Scott Bessent Big Gay Patton. But the truth of the matter is that Trump is operating this generational war like Patton. He's already beaten them, and they're responding to the thing he's already beaten them about.
Yep.
And they don't even know they've lost yet. This is the way Patton rolled through Europe, through France and Germany. I don't watch the movie because the movie glosses over this, unfortunately. It's a great movie. It's still one of my favorites. But the movie glosses over what Patton's real brilliance was, which was that he beat the Germans before they even knew they were beaten. He was behind them, had already effectively captured their command and control, cut them off, and they were eventually going to have to surrender. He didn't give a shit. He moved on to the next target because he knew that by the time they figured out that he'd taken this town, he was already taking the next town.
Right.
And that's the way Trump has been operating in this administration. He lost a little bit of operational tempo over the Epstein files. They got one on him, but he also used that. He's also using that to his advantage as well, because at the end of the day, eventually the entire world, everything they were doing was tied to Trump's owned by Israel. America's betrayed by Israel. Israel's the enemy. Israel's the enemy. Israel's the enemy, because they knew that Trump was eventually going to go after Iran, because he's made no bones about it. And this is his second term, so he has to go after them. And if he wants to blow up the old architecture and rewire the world around American oil flows, well, he has to take Iran out. They're not stupid. They can read the board as well as if we can read that board, Halsey. Obviously, they can. And so that's the game that's happening off screen. That's the one that's happening above the headlines, and it's only when you finally get yourself out of the day-to-day and start thinking only strategically. Donald Trump operates at a strategic level, and once and again, I've had, like, I can't tell you how many like schizophrenic conversations I've had with Dexter White over the years about Trump. And eventually, once he made the move on Iran, well, actually, once he started with Venezuela, like, we haven't had an adversarial conversation about what Trump's tempo since then, because we were, in December, we were going back and forth. He was really worried that Trump had lost operational tempo and operational focus. And he said he's got to get wins on the board like immediately, or he's going to be in trouble. And I said, well, okay, you're right. Let's see what happens. And then on January 2nd, he goes and nabs Maduro. Like, done. Oh, by the way, we're just waiting for 2026 before we get started.
Yep.
because I don't know, for whatever reason. And maybe it's because it's the year of the 250th anniversary, and he just wanted to like really start the war, and that's what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm done. I cry uncle. I am not betting against Trump anymore. I'm
I'm
not
not
doing it.
either, but you know what else he did, and I'm convinced now because this I had to try to figure out also, because it
Hmm.
could easily be chalked up to, oh, he just did something dumb, right?
Hmm.
You have people like this Carrie Prejean, right, who he put in on that religious committee, and then she freaked out about Israel and got kicked off, and now she's claiming to be like super Catholic, and she's trying to convince people that Jews are evil and all of that. He's been putting a lot of these nut jobs into like
Mm.
not consequential positions, but positions where they are at least public enough that he can show how
Mm.
retarded they are. And now, because honestly, remember, and this is going to be a thing. No, I'm serious. Mark my
No,
words
I
on
know
this
you're
because you're going to see this over the next few years. Okay.
right.
Everyone knows that if the Democrats get the House, Senate, and presidency, whether it be in 4 years, whether it be in 8 years, it will eventually happen. Right.
Right.
And they're going to do two things. Well, three things. One, they're going to pack the Supreme Court. Two, they're going to kill the filibuster. And three, they're going to give amnesty to every illegal that's left in the country.
Hmm.
Okay? And the majority of those illegals are very normal, very hardworking Catholics. Trump's putting out there, do you want these nut jobs leading you and defining what Catholicism is to a largely Protestant country? Or do you want to show that you're with us? We're the same people. Catholics in this country have always gotten along very well with Protestants just because
Yep.
it's a very conservative country, us,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And with these
Hmm.
nut jobs coming out of nowhere and just trying to make everything about Jews and this and this and this, all of these people who will eventually become citizens, if they're not deported, I'm telling you, it will eventually happen. Might be 10 years from now, whatever. They will give
Right.
amnesty to all these. Remember, it's already happened before. They tricked Reagan
Right.
into doing it, right?
Right.
And Trump has made it a priority from the beginning to try to reach out to the Hispanic Catholic community and bring them on
Hmm.
board MAGA, and he's been largely successful.
Yes, he has.
And I think a big part of it is he's pushing in the mirror right now. He's saying, listen, you have two choices. You can be with me and the rest of us, the conservative Catholics, and make this into a country that you want to live in, which is why you came here in the first place. Or
Hmm.
you can join these leftist, Davos, lunatic, open borders people that just want to bring every piece of shit from your old country to this country. And you could tell
Hmm.
they're making the decision. He's it's the sunlight is the best disinfectant argument. He's just
Hmm.
pushing sunlight on everything. You
Yes,
know?
no, he really he's yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And what we're noting here is that the um the 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 young Catholics, the ones that are coming to the church in droves, are all, for all intents and purposes, sedevacantists.
Mm-hmm.
These are not these are real trad Caths, not these fake trad Caths, right? They're real hardcore Catholics. They want they want this, I again, somebody, a friend of mine called it pastel Catholicism. Nobody actually wants that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And That's the problem. So again, like Israel, like Israel had to look at the generational shift in influence that it had over our national politics. So eventually, it's a rapidly depreciating asset. Well, I got news for you: globalist Catholicism is a rapidly depreciating asset in the United States
Yep.
because the people who have come into the country and the people who are converting to Catholicism, or returning, or young people who are returning to the church. Again, this is mirrored like exactly what happened in Russia after the country hit rock bottom in the 90s. The joke was for years that, in Russia, the difference between the United States and Russia is that in the United States, the parents drag the kids to church, and in Russia, the kids drag the parents to church.
Yep.
We're getting very close to that flipping point where all of these atheists and, non-spiritual Gen Xers and millennials are now going to be dragged to church. Going to drag the Zoomerwaffen are going to drag their friggin' millennial parents and Gen X grandparents to friggin' church again. And we're starting to see it happen. It's happening very quickly. And oh, by the way, the same thing's happening in China. So the godless communist impulse is a thing. Now, in Russia's situation, and this is where this is where I don't want to get out over my skis when it comes down to discussing the process of what's going on in the Orthodox Church. But I'm going to say, all I'm going to say about this is that what I just said is the good parts version. The bad parts version, of course, is that the Russian Orthodox Church is still a wholly owned subsidiary of the FSB, and that's that's a different discussion. You should probably have somebody on who understands that part of it really, really well. I'm not going to speak to that because this is not my area of expertise. I'm just going to throw it out there as a breadcrumb for people to follow and to look at the situation with the Orthodox Church and how they're trying to split that apart and create a first among equals and all the rest of it, and trying to create an Orthodox Pope, which is a long-held desire of both City of London and, of course, their communist quislings.
Right.
FYI. So,
but you know what's really fun about this,
know.
and just we'll end on this note, just because I want to make you laugh for a second. Trump is putting two options out there, right? And he's shining a light on both of them. What do you want to be? The James Fishbeck, J.D. Vance, Candace Owens, Carrie Prejean version of Catholicism, or do you want to be Marco Rubio? That's what he's giving them, and he's not telling them what to pick. He's just showing them, and I think that's what the decision is going to be. That's on the ballot in 2028. And what I'm still trying to figure out how they would do it, because as of right now, they're both residents of Florida. So Rubio and DeSantis can't run together. But at any time, either one of them could just declare D.C. to be their residence, and it's fine. But
there's that. DeSantis, now that you're bringing that into the conversation, the last thing to talk about, of course, is that with Ron's term ending as governor in Florida, he is the natural choice. And we called this like the day he nominated Pam Bondi.
Yep.
That DeSantis is going to be AG after the midterms.
I think so. I agree.
And it also points to the idea that if necessary, Trump will declare a military state of emergency. I am not above that. They are trying to push him into that mode, into that role, declare martial law, turn him into Lincoln. The problem is that as a country, we're ready for that.
Yep.
And the blue states can play their games all they want, but I got news for you. The blue collar guys in New York are not going to put up with this Mamdani bullshit for much longer. Or
I don't think so.
Virginia with the Spanberger bullshit, or any of these MK Ultras, Manchurian candidates, CIA assets. Because here's another thing I want to remind everybody about, which is that go look around at all of these really, really, really terrible senators, congresspeople, governors. They're all ex-CIA. Every bit of them.
Yep.
Spanberger is. Mark Kelly, Alyssa Slotkin.
Mikey Sherrill.
I don't know. What's that?
Mikey Sherrill, governor of New Jersey, the one who's just
there you
elected.
Go. They're all CIA. And what did Tulsi Gabbard pull out yesterday? That the anymore. So
no, sorry about that.
Yeah. So dude, I'm at that point with all of this that we're headed into a very interesting moment, and I think it's going to be one of those moments where they're going to make their move. They're going to make their move to secede or declare it or whatever, and I'm like, it's all just a LARP.
You also got to remember something, and I give them both actually credit for this. But obviously, none of us are the biggest fans of just the straight-up Republican Party. The Republican Party has just as many snakes in it as the Democrats do. Okay? But when you look at 2028, let's just look at just 2028, right? The Democrats have no bench whatsoever. The best they've got right now is Newsom, and that's a disaster. Okay.
Kamala Harris is going to be the candidate.
Oh God.
No,
They only
she
run
is.
her if they want to lose, I think. But
Dude, she's the only one that can break out of South Carolina. We've already sort of me and some of the boys have been gaming this out for a while now, and she's the only one who can come out of South Carolina.
but what I'm saying though is the Republican bench, and I don't know if they would or could do it or whatever. Okay, there's a good possibility that you're going to have the Secretary of State that everybody loves and loves the way he's conducted foreign policy, teamed up with the man who transformed Florida from a purple state into a red paradise. Like literally, he has been the incubator of every policy the Republicans have always paid lip service to and then never did.
Yes.
Like the no property tax, like the incentives on school choice, on constitutional carry. He has literally incubated everything. And one could argue Texas did a decent job too. But one, Texas is being flooded with Muslims and Indians. And number two, they're never going to elect him anyway to president. DeSantis and Rubio are the deepest bench we could ever look for. I don't even know how J.D. Vance could stand on the same stage as those two. You know? And when all's said and done, and this will make you smile, we still got Tulsi too.
Yeah.
You know?
And
We have
and
such
she's
a
gonna-
deep bench heading into 2028.
Yeah. Tulsi is an interesting question. I'm going to leave it open ended. You know how much I like her.
Every time I
but
start to,
give-
I start getting nervous about her that maybe I was wrong. She proves me wrong.
I know every time she's fascinating. So I'm hoping. That's all I got to say. I'll leave it there. And
Thank you very much,
and,
Tom. This has been a blast. I'm so
has been.
glad we were able to do this.
yeah. So everybody, fuck you.
We were right.
We were right because fuck you. That's why.
Yep.
And if you're not sure about where we're headed next, I recommend everybody watch the opening speech to Patton again.
Amen. Amen. Everybody, you can find Tom at tomluongo.me or goldgoatsandguns.com, right? They're both. Or on Twitter at TFL1728. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did.
Excellent. You can find me at halseyenglish. Halsey.english is what it is. And you can also find me on Patreon. You can find me at Twitter at Halsey English. You can find me on YouTube if you're here right now at Halsey English. Thank you guys for joining us. I really appreciate it. On Monday, we're going to have Amy Therese. We're going to be talking about culture. On Tuesday, we have Ian Burlingham. We're going to be talking about what's going on in the Middle East. Things are picking up. I'm back from Passover, and we're about to start having a lot of fun. Thank you guys for joining us. I appreciate it.
Good night.
My fellow Americans, tonight I am speaking to you because there is a growing humanitarian and security crisis at our southern border.
In all honesty, a border wall or steel slats won't work. But great bodies of water will separate us from the horrible Mexican rapists. Introducing the 2019 Trump Great Border Moat. Stocked with the most aggressive penis fish, incredible man-eating alligators, and unbelievable genetically modified moose-cocked rape dolphins, as well as flying, migrant-eating sharkfish. So incredible.
I swore to protect our country, and that is what I will